Hello and welcome to Talking Point. I am Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small.
And the yin and yang is back.
Yes, and I mean, all new look. Keaton's hair. Glad to see that you're well. I took a shave and a haircut. I'm sure a lot of people who've been watching for the last week, having to get way too much of just me, are now kind of confused when seeing this face.
It's a fresh face. Well done, Sean. and by the way, even I was shocked when I was pulling up in front of WSN, and I'm seeing this young man with just carrying a jacket in his hand, waving, and I didn't recognize the individual. Sarah's, wait, hold on, that's Sean.
The best part is I got it cut and shaved in the middle of the day, so I came to work. Of course, those who watched Friday would have seen me with and I miss my beard just a little bit. Anyway, so when I came back now to finish off the day, at the end of the day, everybody around the office is like, something's wrong.
Where did this happen? When did this happen?
Yeah. I got a few of those. What's going on? When did that happen? Something's wrong here.
Anyway, it's good to be back. It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody here at WSN. I mean, after 1 week, and I must admit, I admitted everybody here. I just said admitted. I missed everybody here at the station. So I'm glad to be back and glad that I can have these conversations. I hope I didn't miss anything.
You see, well, you actually did miss a few things. On top of the fact that you don't seem like the person who could enjoy just sitting at home twiddling his thumbs.
You'll be surprised.
But I mean, you do miss a few things. We'll get into the latest chapter of one Mr. Duke's drama. But of course, first, let's start off with the Daily Review. And like I said, we'll get into Mr. Duke's drama, which, there's so much to unpack there in the next few days. I want to hear what you have to say. But before that, well, we have to bring up the fact that there's another missing deadline and another settlement. It's another $2 million. And I find it interesting that the current Attorney General is also directly associated and potentially implicated by this scenario that's been reported in one of the daily newspapers yesterday.
Well, this was actually very interesting because this is now when Reginald Moore, this was before he was actually the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, but he was representing the state.
In this case.
Right? As private practice, he was representing the state. He was the lead attorney on behalf of the Deposit Insurance Corporation, which was actually being taken to court by one Arjun Haripol for wrongful dismissal 7 years ago. Now, this is rather interesting. It never went to trial, and because 2 weeks before the case was due to appear before the court, it was shown by attorneys representing the state that an agreement or an offer was made to Mr. Haripol. Initially, it was the sum of $1.2 million with $200,000 for legal cost, but then a couple of days later, this changed to $1.6 million plus $400,000 to cover legal cost on the condition that the agreement remained confidential.
Confidential.
So nobody would have known about it.
So it seems as though back in 2019, the state's lead attorney and his team failed to file witness evidence by the deadline fixed by the court back then. So this is when Reginald Moore, he was the lead attorney on the case. So it just now begs to question, what happened then? Why was it not done? And with regard to this settlement and non-disclosure, is this an attempt to, I don't know, maybe not get any questions or focus on the matter? Because or to hide some sort of detail that somebody does not want us to know of?
It really actually speaks to a couple of things. Before I answer your question, because it's a very good question, just to give you some details on the case, the court actually received an explanation as to why there was repeated failed attempts to file the witness statements by the court deadline. I don't even know why I use the word attempts in that particular statement, because there were none. There were none attempts at all. But some of the blame was actually put on Reginald Moore and junior counsel Vanessa Gopal. It's been stated that Amor was actually involved in a criminal trial in the Turks and Caicos Islands, and that Vanessa Gopo was also part of another legal case which took up so much time. Thing is, in a law firm, to me, those are rather poor excuses.
Yeah.
Right? In a law firm, if you're taking up all these cases, you're supposed to have your legal team, and you're supposed to have juniors who should be able to handle these matters.
And I would assume, being a senior counsel, one of these skills, you go from junior, you go from clerk to whatever, you're not a low-level role. Management skills, including time management and delegation, should be...
Precisely. But the 2 points to answer your question. The first point is, and repeatedly governments have failed to address this, the political hirings and then firings, right? Because it's no secret, when a government comes into power, essentially all those who held positions within state boards or senior positions, executive positions within state entities are usually dismissed for whatever the reason may be. And then the government's own friends, families, and nepotism is just honestly a huge thing here in TNT. They all receive positions. Now, I'm not saying Mr. Harry Paul is actually within that realm. I don't know. But the point is, this is something that is constantly happening once a government changes.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you hire your people, then when I beat you in the election, I don't want your people. That might undermine me. So I'll replace your people with my people. This is why the service commissions are supposed to be independent. So they are looking to hire, the person on merit, not based on political action. So when governments change over, we don't have this dance about, well, I can't trust you to carry out my agenda.
I mean, that's the reason that is always given. The thing is that political hirings and firings cost the state.
Yeah.
Cost the taxpayers millions. I mean, if we look at the sums and if we take a look at lawsuits that are being put before the court with respect to wrongful dismissals from the government, even right now, the cases with respect to the Education Facilities Company Limited and their management style and what's happened there, all this costs the taxpayers billions of dollars at the end of the day. Plus, it also just adds to the clog within the legal system, and it costs the state not just in terms of finance, but also in terms of operations and the efficiency of services. So it's something that they've failed to address, and quite frankly, it seems as though they don't want to address it at all, because, listen, if we actually try to do something about it, then our friends and family are not going to have any position when we come into power.
Of course.
The other part about it, which isn't always spoken of, is the fact that our law firms being given more than they can handle. Given the reasoning that we've heard behind this case, actually with a failure to file the defense, and then a $2 million agreement being reached on the conditions that, and it's a global settlement, on the conditions that it remains confidential, the actual settlement and the agreement, are law firms being hired on the part of the state or state entities, taking up cases which they simply cannot handle.
Well, the easy answer to that is probably just based off of how we've seen bureaucracy go. But I'll say this with my second question. Is somebody, and by somebody doesn't necessarily mean any particular person. It's just a general statement. There might be somebody looking to hide something. Now, it appears the current lawyers are saying blame the past lawyers. And to some extent, that might seem to be true. They were, Reginald Moore and his team was in charge then. However, at the end of the day, we only have your word for it, and you're the one giving us this, well, let's increase the settlement money and put in an NDA. So I can't necessarily say it's Rich. Well, then again, he is the AG, right? So, now we go into real conspiracy territory. But to some extent, what about the current lead attorney on the case that is directly involved with his decisions? Because technically speaking, I don't see why, even if the AG was saying, make sure they have an NDA. But if the lead attorney is technically throwing the attorney general in the bus, it's like, it's not really in cahoots. So who's trying to hide what? There's a lot of questions here which we probably won't find the answers out to, unfortunately.
I think what we should really do in all fairness to Reginald Moore, he was not the Attorney General in this case when he took up this case. It was a private practice
but
which
he
was
was
hired.
indeed attorney of
No,
the case.
I know.
When the failure to find. So here's the best part. His current stint as AG, I believe I did it. He's not the lead attorney. He's not the day-to-day supervisor. So he has so much responsibility as the guy at the top, not as the guy doing the work. This is the flip side. He don't have that defense here. He was the guy directly involved.
I am not making any excuses, and I cannot find any excuses to make. Unfortunately,
Yes.
I don't have the gift of the gab of some of these politicians to find really some of the most entertaining excuses. But quite frankly,
Reasonable, and I agree with you. It's kind of hard.
I won't even say reasonable. I haven't heard a reasonable excuse in quite some time. But honestly, there are no excuses that could be made on his part. I'm just saying, understand that if he did this as a practicing attorney at law within the private chambers, then as Attorney General, and you're absolutely right, he's not going to see the day-to-day runnings in terms of every single case is going to pass through his desk. I highly doubt that. But things don't just look... It doesn't look good on his part, does it?
So big picture here, is this, first of all, when your boss is in the news for messing up a job that you probably currently have, how does that look to all of the attorneys that the state hires now, right? But then as the public, is this just one more straw piling on the camel's back with regards to why this ministry in particular seems to be, and it's not to say it's the worst ministry, but just the amount of negative press, because it's another $2 million. It's just woof.
I think the camel's back broke a long time ago.
Okay.
I really think.
All right.
But anyway, listen, as I like to say, $2 million down the drain. When Mr. Harry Paul gets that, if he ever gets that, if he has to wait a long time now for cash to be, for a check to be cashed, or I don't know, maybe the NLCB is going to have the winning numbers before they actually,
Oh, Lord.
So all of these things, but whatever it is, you know what? It's just another story in this wonderful place we call TNT.
Speaking about just another story and the follow-up to a past situation, before it was pharmacy licenses, and now we have another race for licenses. Now it's children's homes. It's interesting how it's always these critical situations that deeply impact the lives of people. We're not talking about restaurant licenses or some sort of entertainment or FET licenses. No. These are serious matters, and it appears as though the government, just to highlight their bureaucracy again, they're trying to fast-track the situation, but they could only fast-track it so much, and I believe, I'm not too sure exactly when they're trying to. Oh, I can't remember. Is it by the end of the month that they're trying to get the licenses sorted out?
Well, they're trying to get it by the end of March, actually.
Right.
Now, this is the Minister, Ayanna Webster Roy. This licensing program, and this came out following the entire report last year into the operations of the Children's Authority and Children's Home in TNT. Roughly 8 children's homes will not be licensed in time. So the ministry now has to actually house 231 children. Now, the minister has indicated that roughly 60 children have already found accommodation, but 170 odd children still need to find a home. Now, the position is currently that because they're going to be up to code by the end of March, hopefully, many of these institutions will be able to take back a lot of children. Mm-hmm. But for the next month or so, what are they going to do? According to her, she says the Children's Authority is looking to reintegrate some of those children into their homes. So the orphanages are now going to come very much packed. Some of them across TNT are already packed. But with this case, this situation, it's just going to get a bit more worse.
I mean, there's certain things, first of all, there's just certain things, look, we're not the only country where bureaucracy could be slow with regards to government. Even in the US, they have certain instances where they'll complain about slow bureaucracy, right? The lines at the DMV and all of that. So now the question is, do we necessarily blame our bureaucracy? Because the irony is, for the most part, when people want to get things done in TNT, and they put foresight into it and plan ahead and start on time, it generally will be manageable and you can get it done. But we're not talking one home, you know, we're talking about 8 homes. And the disruption to the whole, I guess you could say, network of homes, I don't want to say industry, but the disruption now of having so many children displaced and having the distribution of resources being disturbed, and they're already, the management of these situations already, like, not, it's questionable.
You see,
right?
the thing is, for me, right, with these 8 homes not being licensed within the time frame that was given, they're not going to meet the deadline. But it seems as though they're still being given that opportunity. So the minister is expressing that by April the 1st, that there will be no children without a home. But what caused these homes to miss their deadline?
That's what I'm saying. Like, why would you miss it? We're not talking like there was an earthquake and you missed it by 6 months because you had to do major renovations. It seems as though you were just a little too late. If it was 1 home, fine, I can understand that, but 8 homes? And then, if it's the case where, in some cases, they just need certifications to meet the grade, is that going to take almost a whole month?
Well, that is precisely why I'm asking the question, because she was able to give some percentiles as to the readiness of some home. For example, St. Jude's is currently at 70%, Cyril Ross Nursery is at 79%, Lady Hojoy Home is at 79%. So we're still waiting for these homes
I'm curious, are those percentages just based on the necessary certification? So it has 82% at Rafa House of the necessary certification, or is it 82% of the work is done?
This is the thing. If you are, if you're making these statements before a joint select committee, you would hope that more information comes out.
Generally not.
How did you arrive to this particular statistic? How did you arrive to 79% or to 88% or to 91%? 2, what are the exact criteria in which these homes have missed? Why is it that they're not going to make the deadline? Because at the end of the day, we're speaking about children now. We're speaking about the future of TNT. And people understand this. If it is that we aren't able to resolve this situation, what is going to happen to these children? Where are they going to end up? And at the end of it all, how are they going to contribute to TNT?
Because we've already seen bad situations involved with the mismanagement of our institutions before. But bigger picture now, this is the second situation within the last couple of months where, one, we're rushing to get licenses out to something that's necessary, right? I think the pharmacy situation is still not necessarily resolved.
No, it's not.
And it's not as though we're not talking about the same bureaucracy, regulatory system with the same people, and there's just a bottleneck. We're talking about 2 separate, I'm pretty sure people who assess and give out pharmacy licenses are not necessarily the ones who are assessing buildings and structure and management or administration of children's homes.
Well, you never know. I mean, we do live in TNT. You never know.
But so now my question is, and to what extent should we expect more of these things? What's going on with this sort of situation? Why is it that this is now looking like it's the start of a trend? It's not necessarily a trend yet, but it's looking like the start of a trend that our bureaucracy just can't keep up.
No,
don't say growth, just current level of operation.
That's not the start of a trend. This has been happening for years and years. I think anybody will tell you that. This is not the start. It's just that because we've become perhaps more aware as to what's taking place, perhaps because we're getting more details and more information. That's why.
Well, folks, we are more or less out of time. We did not get into the Watson Duke situation as I was hoping for, but I promise we will get into that tomorrow. However, we have to take a break. When we return, I want to take another case study with a tragedy that happened recently in Greece. How does that apply, or the lessons that can come out of that apply to us in TNT? Stay tuned. This is Talking Point WSN. Keaton Shah is back, folks.
Never mind.
We'll be right back.
Hi guys, this is Vonna Bigford inviting you to Woman Power, a wonderful show celebrating women. Come out in your numbers. It's on March 8th, 2023 at Napa. It features a wonderful, wonderful cast. Come out and share energies with us as we celebrate women on International Women's Day.
The network of NGOs for the advancement of women and the Mayor of Port of Spain, Joel Martinez, presents Woman Power.
So let me tell you about real woman.
International Women's Day, Wednesday, 8th March at the Napa Auditorium. Come and enjoy Vonette Bigford, Joanna Chuckery, Mavis John, Alicia Jagasaw, Sharda Patasa, and Patrice Roberts.
Make I love you, Jaja.
Special guest, David Rudder. Your host is Penny Gomez. Showtime, 7 p.m. Special reserve, 300. General admission, 250. Early bird tickets, if bought by this Saturday, March 4th. Cost $25 less. For more info, call 678-7549.
Trinidad and Tobago Securities and Exchange Commission advises that it is now a criminal offense to operate, advertise, participate, or invite persons to join a prohibited scheme such as Ponzi and pyramid-type financial arrangements. You can now be fined up to $10 million or face 10 years in prison. Visit our website for more information.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Did you know that polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS, is one of the most common issues faced by women of reproductive age in Trinidad and Tobago?
So we see more patients with polycystic if they're obese, but there are the small-built patients who also have polycystic ovaries.
What other treatment options are there available for these girls? What's Up Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point on WESN, the only station in the nation broadcasting in HD. And folks, here on Talking Point, we do look at things around the world. There's lessons to be learned, and why suffer through everything on our own when we could try to learn from those who have forged the path or might have made the mistakes or suffered through the tragedies before us. Of course, that's how we, for the most part, managed COVID-19. But now, coming out of the economic situation where I would say, in my opinion, and the opinion of, I believe, most economists, hard choices have to be made. Sometimes those choices could lead to perilous situations, and that seems to be what has happened in Greece. So, to see more, and we'll talk about it after, it's time to start with Cue This.
Another day of anger, another day of protest with tensions running high here in the streets of Athens, right outside Parliament. We saw young people clashing with police officers, the police officers responding with tear gas in an effort to disperse the angry crowds. Today we saw youths, unions and ordinary citizens express their rage, really. They held placards and they chanted saying this was not an accident, this was a crime. Many also called for the resignation of the Prime Minister. That will be the big question on how Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the Conservative leader, leader will address this anger. Today, he issued an apology on his Facebook page, saying that as a prime minister, I owe everybody, but above all to the relatives of the victims, a huge apology in capital letters. He wrote that, both personally, he said, but also in the name of all those who governed the country over the years, because he said it's not possible that in Greece in 2023, 2 trains were moving in opposite directions on the same track. He also mentioned how in the next few days he will immediately improve the railroad safety until the electronic systems are completed. He also said he will ask for the European Commission for help. Other friendly nations as well will provide their know-how and expertise in ways that Greece can improve its railway, but will also investigate what the malfunctions were over the past 20 years when it comes to the Greek train infrastructure. Let's see how all this comes down with the Greek people. I'd like to remind viewers that we have elections that were meant to be called in the coming days. This, for now, has been postponed. Conservative Prime Minister has had a comfortable lead over his opposition party, the leftist Syriza, but will this tragedy actually change all this? A lot will happen in the coming days. Let's see if this apology and the actions will be enough to allay the anger and the sorrow of the Greek people.
Grief turned to anger as thousands gathered in Athens' main square to demand accountability for Tuesday's deadly train wreck. The 12,000-strong crowd released hundreds of black balloons into the sky in honor of those killed in the crash. Carrying signs saying murderers, demonstrators have accused the government of allowing companies to put profits above human lives.
Despite the continuous warnings by workers, there was criminal indifference by those responsible to our requests over the safety systems, and that's what led to this tragic accident.
Clashes broke out in the square after some protesters set fire to garbage bins and threw Molotov cocktails. In response, police fired tear gas and stun grenades. The government has blamed human error for the crash, while the Prime Minister has asked forgiveness from the victims' families. He's vowed Greece will soon reform its railway system. Members of the opposition have called for a thorough investigation.
We have a duty, especially towards the victims, to explain to the public exactly what happened. Of course, we don't think this is the fault of any one individual. We think the government shares the responsibility.
Meanwhile, the station master in Larissa has appeared in court. He admitted responsibility for the accident and has been charged with endangering lives and disrupting public transport.
So there are a couple of things there. First of all, they're saying because of the austerity measures from their previous economic depressions or recessions, they did not necessarily have enough resources to reinvest into their train system, whether it's maintenance or modernization. The workers have been complaining. The other thing is the fact that this, I guess, I don't want to say luckily, but luckily for the public, it happens near an election. So it seems as though it's not an issue that could be easily ignored with enough time. It seems as though there's a lot of effort now that's going to be done to try to get some sort of resolution as quickly as possible. And the last thing is the opposition member or leader there who spoke, that video courtesy France 24. She had a very, I would say, a nicely balanced or measured tone. Perhaps she might have gone into further attacks against the government, but it was about getting a resolution from that clip that we saw. So it's interesting, but I highlight those three things because to some extent can you see in TNT where either we have the bad parts of what I just said, or the good parts we don't necessarily see in TNT?
I think, first of all, condolences, I mean, they might not even be watching the show, I highly doubt, but we do send condolences to all the families who lost their loved ones. 46 people passed away in this accident, most of them students in their 20s.
I think it went up to over 50.
It's just tragic. This story is very much tragic.
57.
But at this point, a lot has happened since trains have actually stopped, unions went on strike. You saw what was taking place there with respect to civilians having to protest in the manner in which they did. And that's the thing, you see that happening here in TNT a lot with respect to union leaders, with respect to protests. I mean, nothing has ever really come to a halt. But that's the thing. We're such a small nation, and yet somehow we forget about the biggest things within a couple of weeks. It seems as though it's just thrown under the bed, thrown under the rug. And that is where accountability comes in. Because if it is that we're forgetting these things, if it is that we just push these things aside because we have to go on with our everyday life, by us forgetting, governments past and present, and perhaps in the future, will know that, listen, it's just going to be an easy ride. It is an easy ride. I think for me, one of the more interesting developments that come out of this story was the former transport minister, former Costas Carmelis. He actually tendered his resignation. Now, initially I saw this as a cowardly act, tendering your resignation right after a disaster. His reasoning was that it was out of sheer respect in the memory of those who were lost. You know, I would think, listen, you know, U.S. Transport Minister, you have to do your absolute very best now to try and deal with this situation. You have to try and find a reasonable, some way to try and actually resolve these issues. So I was surprised with his resignation, but it tied back into something else as well. He saw it fit to resign. He thought to himself, I said, listen, I couldn't do this job. I didn't do this job to the best of my ability, or I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the power that I think I need. Therefore, it is best that I tender my resignation.
But not only that, how could he speak with authority when technically under his watch? And yes, he's not the guy who put the two trains together that night or that day, but it was over his management, overall capacity. How would he have the authority to say, this is how we're going to fix it?
I think the two things is that, one, if he directly hired the station manager, there is an issue there.
Well, he probably hired the guy who hired him.
Right, but I think the real issue in terms of his position was, as I said, the aging infrastructure. If he wasn't actually able to at least maintain aging infrastructure. So that's one thing. But I wanted to tie that back to TNT in particular.
Yes.
Because down here, with the mistakes or the allegations or even the cases that come up against some ministers, let's use our Works and Transport Minister, for example. Given the road conditions, given the state of buildings here in TNT, and even the fact that even when structures are built, they're not necessarily secure and sound. It's under his leadership as well. We're using the same logic that applied to this case in Greece. When do ministers accept, listen, they don't have the ability or the capability to get the job done, so we have to step back?
Well, but it seems as though in this case, a lack of funds was one of the significant perpetrators or causes at the start, you know, what got the ball rolling to get them to this point. And I would argue that we see that potential here. Lack of funds is not necessarily the Works and Transport Minister's fault. What he does with what he's given, that's a whole other situation. And if we had more information, we could be a bit more fair with regards to trying to hold him to account, but we don't, so we just have to generalize in his case. It doesn't seem as though it's effective. We can't say for sure if it's his fault or not, but what we can say is, with regards to how the government prioritizes things in the budget, now we have to ask, is this a sign that more priority on ensuring your infrastructure is up to snuff? Because it seems as though last year they allowed our road system to kind of degrade and they're now starting to repair it. What if it was something more critical?
The thing is, we know a lack of funds is an issue. That's always been the case. I think the budget is read every year, and ministries don't actually receive everything that's announced in the budget. Let's use an example. The Counter-Trafficking Unit, Alana Wheeler, she's the former director. Recently, she revealed that she was receiving funding to the tune of $6 million annually, and then that dropped to $2 million. You know, that's going to hinder the operation. So we know that funds or a lack of funds is an issue, but you're absolutely right. It's what you do with the money that you have. If you're going to implement a temporary measure that costs $16 million, we don't do if we do feasibility studies in Trinidad, feasibility studies cost more than actually getting the job done. So the issue is that because we're giving out these exorbitant contracts, who is actually monitoring the quality of works? Who is ensuring that when the work is complete or the job is done or the process is ongoing, that the quality is up to par? You know, all those things are a part of it. And I'm not speaking necessarily just for the Ministry of Works and Transport. I'm speaking across the board.
The thing is, I think one of the things that I'm starting to see more and more is that leadership in government, one of the basic aspects is just coming down to what do you prioritize? Whose needs? Because there will always be too much needs. You could be as rich as you want, unless you're like Gulf oil state rich, there will always be too much needs. Even in America, there's too much needs for their national budget, as big as it is. So now, exactly, and I go back to this, what are we prioritizing, and to what extent are we not prioritizing something critical? Because when the ferry service and the cargo service for the sea bridge went down, one could argue that probably wasn't getting the priority that it needed to get. Right? I'm not saying that they need to find money from you know, out in thin air, but at least perhaps now you need to be held accountable. Explain to us, what is your strategy? What are you prioritizing? So that when there are deficiencies, at the very least, we could say, oh, I understand why you're holding off here so that we have money to deal with this more critically. Because we need transparency for this, because look at what happens now if they make the wrong decision on something that's critical for health and safety. We have oil and gas, industrial parks and sectors. What if something critical is being forgotten there?
What if?
What if something did happen last year? Yes.
It's perhaps, I think, the more fair question to apply.
But to close off, now, one thing that, you know, it's near an election, so the politicians have to be a bit more, they can't take as long as a time as we've seen other issues take really long. You can't have a 6-month investigation. It's not going to work this time. We can't necessarily bank for that in TNT. That's just how it worked out in this case. Maybe something like that, hope it doesn't happens to us when our elections comes down, and we'll see how we respond there. But with regards to how the opposition member spoke, and let's not limit it to the opposition. Let's also put in just members of the public. When these things happen, are we looking to just say blame, blame, blame? Are we looking for solutions? Do we look for solutions enough?
That's the thing. It's how that individual responded. Now that, let's bear in mind, that's a television interview.
True.
Right. So
Edited,
that's not standing up in front of the crowd. That's not standing up within Parliament. But when you respond with rage, everybody's hurt, everybody's angry. But if you add fuel to the fire, it's not going to help the situation very much. At the same time, I'm not saying that you need to be absolutely soft on the government. But precisely the point is, as an opposition, I always think how you respond and what you bring forward. If it is that you're constantly criticizing, you're grabbing at straws for any argument without bringing forward any sense of a solution or any alternatives, then you're just wasting our time as well.
At this point, let's just push the opposition aside. What about the rest of the citizens? Because when we protest, when we used to protest, which is actually not that long ago, about issues, union protesting is wages, right? They don't protest about issues. Where was the oil field workers union protesting about the Paris situation on a significant extended basis, about health and safety in their sector, about any issue outside of wages? The same thing with tutor. But when we get our voices heard, does the public also do the same thing where it's really just about blame?
I think sometimes as well protests are actually forms of distraction. I think immediately following a disaster, if protest takes place, there's more focus on those protests than the actual disaster. So sometimes here in TNT we go about doing things the wrong way. So protests could be a distraction from the actual events that happened and trying to find solutions for that event. Also, what you might say from a protest, what you might say within a protest, who's ever leading the march, that might also be a huge distraction. Oftentimes I say, listen, we've gone about doing things the wrong way here in TNT, even when it comes to protesting. But you just asked when our voices are heard. Our voices ever heard?
Well, yeah, that's that. When I say heard, I mean we'll hear it is if the leaders will hear it and act upon it.
They don't, because again, it's a distraction. Listen, protest in TNT actually could be, one can make the argument, convenient to those in authority.
Well, I mean, catch-22 is to be heard with protests. We actually have to have them, but we haven't had them in quite some time. And we'll see how that goes as time progresses, if the population is just going to sit down and take it. But in the meantime, we have to take a break. When we come back, well, we have a different media ambassador to speak with us about the upcoming International Women's Day. Stay tuned. This is Talking Point at WSN, your content capital.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola.
Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered,
the conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to Talking Point, folks. And we are joined today because it's International Women's Day coming up on Wednesday. So we have with us to celebrate International Women's Day Inspector Michelle Lewis, from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Good morning, Inspector.
Good morning to you. Good morning to Sean and Keaton, and of course to all your viewing and listening public. It's a pleasure to be here to represent the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
So, of course, it's International Women's Day coming up, and well, the obvious thing is the fact that now we have a new Commissioner of Police. She's the first female commissioner, substantive Commissioner of Police. From your point of view, what is it like now seeing another woman get the top job?
It is a wonderful experience because it's the first time ever in Trinidad and Tobago to have a female at the head of a law enforcement agency in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's really, really a wonderful thing. We have women police, particularly in the lower ranks, who haven't really engaged the commissioner before. Looking forward to, coming to the divisions and meeting and greeting and that kind of thing. And having said that, of course, as you said, International Women's Day is on Wednesday. And so the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Women Affairs Bureau. So within the organization, you have the Women Affairs Bureau. And the Women Affairs Bureau is headed by the most senior woman police in the organization. In this case, it is the Commissioner of Police. And then you have the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Women Police. Similar to what we have the Welfare Association, right. You also have the Women Affairs, the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Women Police, through which international conferences every year and that kind of thing. And this year, we have partnered for the Women Affairs Bureau, the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Women Police, and the Police Hospital, which this year is headed by a female doctor. So before we were under the government, but now the first time we actually have a female head under the TTPS. So we have real history taking place in Trinidad right now. The hospital, the Commissioner of Police as the head, which has not happened before. And so we have a lot to celebrate. Even within the organization, the monitoring and evaluation compliance unit is headed by a female and sworn officer. So we have women in very strategic and high positions within the organization so that young women and young women police can look up to that and aspire to be one like that.
Do you think that, and I think it's incredible, thank you for actually informing us as to what's taking place right now, because Sean and I were only very much aware of the Commissioner of Police. But with all that, the last thing you just mentioned is for women police officers to now look up. But is it also an opportunity for more females within society, perhaps to enter the police service and see it as an opportunity to serve their nation? Listen, this is, we're really, I think women are now seeing more opportunities for themselves, but this just is a great inspiration for all.
I remember when I applied to enter the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which was some years ago. I celebrate 21 years next month, the 8th of April, right? But when I did the exam and all of that, because the process now was different, there were more women on the waiting list than men, because naturally we take in more men than women. So where, for example, you might take in 10 or 20 women, they will take in 100 men.
Well, I want to ask a question about that. What is it like with regards to women police versus male recruits? Because the job, I would assume, would have a certain amount of physical requirements at the end of the day. You could get in a confrontation. Is it that there's standards that might be more difficult for smaller women, let's say? Smaller men as well, to meet, or is it that the police service is just, for whatever reason, thinking, look, it's just better overall? Don't know why. I don't know why, but they're just thinking it's better overall to hire more men. So is it the standards causing the discrepancy, or is it that they're just kind of doing it because of tradition or traditional thinking?
Right, so you have to look, so there's a criteria to enter the police service, right? Your height, your weight, that kind of thing, that's standard, male or female. But then you also have to look at the trends that is taking place in the country and where you would put more of your resources where crime is concerned. And so you have, over the years, over the decades, because Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is one of the oldest organizations in Trinidad and Tobago, period, right? Since 1592, right? So it's long. So when you look at the persons who commit the criminal offenses, in the main, it's men. And so it would stand to reason that you'll put men to fight men in that regard. And so when women police first entered TTPS in 1955, it was merely to deal with women and children issues, which were minute. Now, of course, you have a change in the society, right. And so you have more women. You have women in every section within the service, section, branch, unit, division, except one. So we have women there, not just to deal with women as victims, but women as suspects.
And that is interesting as well.
Women and children.
We're hearing...
As suspects.
As victims and suspects.
We're actually hearing suggestions, and I mean this came most recently from one particular office, but across TNT we're hearing that society, the environment is not one for women to grow up now. It's just becoming so dangerous for women. And yet we're seeing officers, female officers on the front line. I think I read a story in which a female officer actually nabbed a suspected kidnapper while she was out doing her shopping as well. So even though they're suggesting that society here in TNT, the environment is becoming too toxic or too dangerous for women to grow up in, or for children to grow up in, you have these female police officers who are making a difference and putting themselves on the front line to try and change that narrative.
Agreed. So I don't know if there's scientific data to support what you just said, but I know that we do have a lot of homicides where the men are the ones who are dying. Mm-hmm. And so to me, they are, I mean, from my layman perspective, it appears as if they are the losing generation there, that species of men, because it's either they are killing themselves or they are victim of one sort or another. But within the organization, within the TTPS, we have male officers standing strong with female officers. And this year, we are celebrating with a symposium. And so that symposium that we would hold for women police throughout, it will have medical doctor, it will have behavioral therapist doctor. So we have Dr. Spence. Dr. Joanne Spence was already indicated, and she was one of the persons instrumental in setting up the mentorship program in the Ministry of National Security many years ago. We also have a gynecologist coming in with us, and of course we'll do the makeup with Sash and all that. So we really have a nice day, well planned for women to celebrate this week. And during the month of April as well, we also having health caravans. So like I said, the police, female, Women Affairs, and the TTPS, and so we'll be going to the different divisions and having health caravans, as well as to sensitize women police of what are available to them, because we are humans too, and people think that women police do not go through. We have women police who have been victims of all types of offenses, all types of crimes. The Women Affairs Bureau offers safe house to women police, which means that women police are also victims of domestic abuse. And so to let women police know throughout Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and to sensitize them and let them know these services are still available, because sometimes we forget, you know. So we have that caravan going around, and as well we have a lot of women who can create stuff, bathing suits and all that, and so we're giving them that forum as well to display their small cottage industries.
It's interesting that you said that. I mean, crime really, yes, we see, you know, very violent crime. There was a very violent murder with one woman, but there are more men being murdered. Meanwhile, domestic violence, we know that some men might be caught up with domestic violence, but, you know, I believe, I'm not too sure if there's more women caught up with gender-based violence. Correct. As victims.
Yes, you are correct.
And now you're saying that police officers, women police officers, are not immune to this.
Correct.
Is it that when, and I don't know if it's just perception that we perceived it to grow, but as it potentially grew, is it that the victimization of some women police officers that also increased as well?
Can you say that again?
So as we saw more gender-based violence being inflicted on the women of the nation,
right.
Is it that that's when the incidences of gender-based violence started to affect women police officers, or is this a long-term problem that we are not aware of?
No, it's not a problem. It's a fact of life in society that you will have women, because not just because you're a police officer or anybody in law enforcement, mean that you're immune to the society and the ills of the society. You have women police who would have been, the vehicle would have been stolen from them, their home would have been broken into. Sometimes you get yourself in relationships and it doesn't turn out the way you expect it to. And so there are instances that happen. I wouldn't say that there's an increase. What I am saying is that the Women Affairs Bureau has offered that since before the unit came into being. But we have women police who may not be aware of it. And so when you have 3,000 plus women, there could be women who are not aware of the facilities that are available. And so the caravan is going to give that level of sensitization throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
I'm actually very much pleased to hear the initiative over the next month, and even with respect to how the Trans-Tobago Police Service is recognizing International Women's Day. My only hope is that this is not something that we only recognize within a week. You know, I'm seeing newspapers putting out articles around this time celebrating women and whatnot, and I am only hoping that, you know, this is something that's only confined to 1 week. This is something that continues throughout the year. Because, you know, having this conversation, you know, people watching might think, you know, it's really interesting. It only seems as though the conversation with respect to the contribution, with respect to the level of respect for women in society is only confined when International Women's Day is on the calendar. And I just truly hope that it's expanded beyond that.
Well, you know, they say that Mother's Day is celebrated more than Father's Day. And Valentine is more women than men. I'm just saying.
I like your practical perspectives. I like your practical perspectives. Because, you know, you could say that, if I say that, then I get a whole lot of trouble. But
I agree with you.
Just to be a bit more serious, though, International Women's Day, we highlight women's issues. We also, to some extent, highlight gender-based violence issues. It's not the only time we do so, right, to be fair. But we know that the commissioner, she's given a very, very basic outline on how she intends to try to deal with murders in the short term and the long term. Very basic, just some dates. But does the initiative also include, with regards to crime fighting initiatives she's coming to include, are there any new initiatives with gender-based violence or any thought of looking towards trying to deal with that more significantly?
So within the organization, not just gender, but crime generally, because, you know, homicide, illegal firearms and ammunition is also a very serious issue that we have in Trinidad and Tobago, right? And so the persons who normally spearheaded those departments, together with the ACP crime, will come up with new strategies to be able to fight it. Yes, the Commissioner of Police and the Executive would have their strategic plan, which the organization, and so all other plans within the different is in alignment to that.
Right.
To go into detail on what the Commissioner has in her hand, well, I can't,
not detail,
but I can tell you that...
But will we see more effort?
Yeah, you will see it. You will see it. We had Ma'am Guy Allen, Claire Guy Allen, she's the one who heads that unit. She's very passionate, so she has both the children and the gender under her supervision. And so you do see more offenses happening where men are the perpetrators as against women. But you're also seeing a lot of offenses now where children are suspects.
Victimizing their own family?
No, in terms of, so you have child protection unit,
right,
and then you have gender-based violence unit under special victim right. So child protection, so gender-based violence unit, male and female, regardless of the age. And then you have child protection, where when you're saying child protection, you're saying the child being the one protected. I'm also saying that within that unit, you also have children who are the suspects, and you're seeing more of that now, especially when it comes to illegal firearms and ammunition and the use of it.
Right.
So she has strategy. She has.
I know that you came here and we discussed the topic, and I want to thank you very much for your time. But you see that very last thing that you mentioned with respect to, we're seeing it a bit more with children becoming suspects. I really hope we could expand on that conversation in the future. But thank you very much for your time and your presence.
Thank you for having us. We continue to celebrate women. And so we are so happy to have a female at the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I just want to say that again.
Well, I mean, to be fair, live it up, because
of course,
it is well deserved.
But you know, the men, because you know, the DCP, Mr. Christopher, Mr. Simon, and Mr. Samuel, they really had a good celebration for her.
Okay.
They had a real fantastic thing for her the Monday right after. And then the Women Affairs had another celebration for the Commissioner the Monday right after. So she has full support, and we really enjoying the opportunity to have a female at the head. So thanks for having us.
Well, thank you very much, Inspector Michelle Lewis. It's a pleasure. And on behalf of Talking Points and WSN, we extend best wishes to all female members of the Protective Services, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Certainly. Well, folks, we have to break for news on the hour, and when we return, well, we'll open up the phone lines. Stay tuned to Talking Point.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Ministry of Social Development addressing Claude Noel issue. Double murder in Mount Hope. Drowning in Manzanilla. And internationally, thousands shelterless after blaze at Bangladesh camp. Now for the details. In response to a video which is now viral related to the poor treatment towards TNT icon Claude Noel, the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services advises that Mr. Noel is a beneficiary of its Special Achievers Grant and has been for a number of years.
I saw the video and I was very concerned about it because I know that he is a recipient of our Special Achievers Grant. And I was wondering, what was the situation, why, this was happening. So we did some checks, some investigations, revealed that the ministry had some checks in its possession for him that was not collected. But last week, someone, his nephew, collected those checks. I believe it was to the amount of $50,000. Now, what we decided is that we're going to conduct an investigation into his well-being.
Mr. Noel was the country's first lightweight world title holder when he defeated Mexican El Gato Gonzalez in 1982, has been a household name for the world over, who was once feared for his powerful punching ability. Police are investigating a double murder in Mount Hope. Reports say 31-year-old Keston Cumberbatch and 40-year-old Anthony Young, both of Cirillo Drive, Mount Hope, was gunned down around 8:40 p.m. on Saturday. Two masked gunmen approached the duo and shot them. The men were rushed to the hospital where they were pronounced dead. The perpetrators escaped on foot. While the search continues for the body of a man who drowned at Manzanilla Beach on Saturday. Around 2 p.m., 44-year-old Terrence Joseph got into difficulty while bathing near the Manzanilla Beach resort. Hunters Search and Rescue Team joined family members, neighbors, and the air support unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in an effort to locate him. On to international news now. Thousands of people have been left without shelter after a massive fire broke out in a crowded Rohingya refugee camp in southeastern Bangladesh. The blaze, which is now under control, engulfed some 2,000 shelters at Cox's Bazar camp on Sunday. It is estimated that about 12,000 people, most of whom escaped violence in neighboring Myanmar, have had their accommodation destroyed. The cause of the fire is not yet clear and no casualties have been reported. Well, that was your news of the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
Hi guys, this is Vonna Bigford inviting you to Woman Power, a wonderful show celebrating women. Come out in your numbers. It's on March 8th, 2023 at Napa. It features a wonderful, wonderful cast. Come out and share energies with us as we celebrate women on International Women's Day.
The network of NGOs for the advancement of women and the Mayor of Port of Spain, Joel Martinez, presents Woman Power.
So let me tell you about woman.
International Women's Day, Wednesday, 8th March at the Napa Auditorium. Come and enjoy Vonnet Bigford, Joanna Chuckery, Mavis John, Alicia Jagasaw, Sharda Patasa, and Patrice Roberts. Special guest, David Rudder. Your host is Penny Gomez. Showtime, 7 p.m. Special reserve, 300. General admission, 250. Early bird tickets, if bought by this Saturday, March 4th. Cost $25 less. For more info, call 678-7549.
Well, welcome back to Talking Points, and thank you very much to Mr. Denise Martin for news on the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, let's open up the phone lines now where we give you the opportunity to comment on Sean's haircut. Looks good, doesn't it? Get a look at that. Get a look at that, please.
My beard looked good. My beard looked good, folks.
Anyway,
don't deny it.
Seriously, calling and join the conversation this morning, contribute to the national discussion, because there is a lot taking place in TNT. Sean and I didn't get into everything this morning. We usually have a question of the day, but I'm actually just going to put out one question there now, and I'm challenging everybody out there. I sometimes put these questions out. I don't always get a response, and I'm hoping somebody could answer me today. Who was the first female member of the Legislative Council of Trinidad and Tobago?
That's a good question. I have no idea. I don't think that was ever taught to me
Yet
in social studies at any level.
I am telling you that you know, but you just don't remember. You know it. You just can't remember it right now.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Is that recent?
No, it's not recent, but
no. If it was historical, like the time of Eric Williams or before, I'm not gonna know.
All right, we have a caller on the line with us from Dabity. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Hi guys, morning.
Morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Your co-host has a lovely haircut, looking very dapper this morning. Just need to smile when I compliment you.
Thank you.
Yeah, with respect to the issue with the AG, I think it's not just the AG's office alone has been falling short with governance, but we have state agencies have been falling short, and I think that one of the problems is with respect to how state briefs are really issued and who are the ones responsible for issuing state briefs. You know, it's like, are they given out to friends and families, or is there just a clique? And I think that is downright not being able to manage properly from the officers that are responsible, because a simple thing as responding or having a statement entered into evidence is very much non-acceptable. And I think that we need to air it as you all are airing it, and that would be my point for the day. And welcome back, my brother, and have a nice week.
Thank you.
You were missed, and thanks a lot, gentlemen. Wonderful program.
Thank you very much,
caller.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. It is good to be back. Good morning, caller from Shagonas.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. You mentioned about every time government change, they put their own people in post. And there's nothing wrong with that, provided they put people who do the job. Unfortunately, our situation is very to feel at a public trust. When you make a special purpose company, it's to do something that the normal public service methodology is not best suited for. That is when you have things like utilities or companies or whatnot. Now, we making public service special thing. Who give our contracts? They can't do the job. So what you create them for? Isn't to give their partners or whosoever it is the job. I think like a unicorn. They do what things work department used to do. What them do themselves, they do nothing. And they have about 15 like that just come out of work department. And you go all over the public service and you see the same thing. Any questions, gentlemen, or criticism?
Actually, no, I think I agree with most of what you said.
What you don't agree with, don't tell me what you agree with.
You remember, I think the one thing that I don't necessarily disagree with you suggesting that there's nothing wrong when a government changes hands. There's nothing wrong with putting people in place. I think specifically, as you said, it's who you put in place. Because if a government changes hands and they've dismissed an individual from an office without a reason or without a reasonable justification, and that individual,
make their own policy.
if that individual was doing an excellent job and with what they had and was probably the best person suited for the position, but we're still going to get rid of them because they weren't hired by our government and we want to put our people there. You know, that is where I have an issue.
It comes down to continuity. Yes, we might change direction.
That hasn't always been done. We have had some people that was allowed to stay on over the various regimes. And some of them were very good.
Yeah.
We had that guy in Pepteco, the old cyclist, he had athlete.
Well, the current CEO of MTS, Leonard Ratan Singh, he has been there for years. He's been through the... Yeah.
The thing is, management with continuity, in theory, is more efficient because the guy is there. And if he's a good person, thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor. If he, sorry about that. If he's good in his role, as you said, if it's the right person, then it's fine. He will be able to execute somebody else's agenda because he's the right person. He's not just a political person.
And that's the thing. I have no problem with if a government changes hands. They do a performance analysis of almost every individual within the executive or within a state board. No, the issue is that also could take some time.
Right. Usually they don't take. They do it quickly.
And if you want to have individuals like for example, the Prime Minister wants to have any Prime Minister wants to have a direct hand in picking each individual for each position. Like, I want this individual for this to be the chairman of this board, this one to be the chairman of this board, this one to be CEO, this one to be COO. You know, that, you see, this is where we're getting things totally, it's mucked up. And this is where we're losing out as a nation. We have a caller line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I just calling to check in with you guys. I have not been so well for late, and that's why I've been calling in. And you may find I may not be calling in as frequently as I can. So I just calling to keep in touch. I keep watching the show as long as I can. But my health is, not all that good. So I just called to let you know that I'm still there with you all and support you all 100%. Thank you and have a good morning.
Well, sir, thank you very much for the call. I mean, I heard it in your voice. That, you're not well, but thank you very much not only for the effort for calling in and to, let us know that you're still watching us and supporting us, but we just wish you all the very best, and we hope you have a speedy recovery. We hope you get over whatever you're facing right now, we really hope you get over that, because it's always good hearing from you and always good to hear your contribution. We appreciate that call very much, by the way, and that effort. But we have a call on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning to that. That fella, I think, who sounding like Sean, but I don't know who that fella is.
Definitely not Sean. Definitely not Sean. Not Sean. No.
Wasn't Sean. You know, last week they had one of those joint select committees, and they had CPEP in front of the committee. And it is appalling to know that CPEP has not been able to have audited financials available since 2015 to now. This is 7 years. And to listen to that and to understand that this should not be happening. This should not be happening, especially with a special purpose company, as you all mentioned, a special purpose company that has state funds. One of the things I am hoping that will happen with the new implementation of property tax, based on what I listened to on that committee there, they said the budget is around $400 million for the year. They have 330 CPEP gangs under their purview. Remember, I'm not to be corrected, but I think I remember that when the minister had spoken about the revenue from the property tax that they want to give to the regional corporation, it's supposed to be somewhere in the vicinity of around $700 and something million.
No, yeah, I think you're right with that figure, that estimation.
Right. So I am hoping that if those corporations get that type of money, that we can see the end of special purpose companies like CPEP, and those corporations would take over that type of maintenance in the community.
Yeah, I am 100% with you. I've been hoping for this for a long time now, actually.
Because I remember in the past, in the community, you would have within for instance in San Fernando here, what you would see is that the city corporation, which would be the borough corporation previously, would have gangs going out into the community, cutting the grass and doing those same things. Now we had the implementation of CPEP, so it is not under the corporation. However, they're doing similar things. So I am hoping that we don't spend double money to get the same thing done. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, caller. I agree. You know, it's amazing. I think last week when I was out, this is something that I thought of a lot. There is no need for CPEP and TNT. You know, programs such as CPEP and URP were created when Trans-Tobago really was benefiting tremendously from oil and gas wells, from energy. Right?
Think about it for a second, right? When the economy is supposedly booming, shouldn't the growth of the economy lead to more jobs? But what it led to was a growth of these stopgap jobs, which are not supposed to be permanent, which upset the labor market, which is not giving us the productivity. 330 CPEC bands, we probably get the productivity of 110 CPEC bands out of it.
To me, there is absolutely no need for CPEP. CPEP to me is a waste of money. If these individuals, this is where you also lose out money from private contracts and contractors. And there was an entire thing about it as well as to how programs such as CPEP and URP has also contributed to gang violence and the birth and perhaps continuation of some crimes. I think even Roger Alexander, Inspector Alexander, he said it. He says, you know, how is it that you actually try and fight people who are actually receiving legal money? You know, so there's no need for these institutions if they fall under the remit of the corporation and they're directly employed by the corporation. And it says the corporation identifies, this is what needs to be done, this is what you have to do today. I would much prefer that than a contract being given
Hold on, we'll get into that after this call.
Call on the line with us from Port of Spain. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. You always say that you never get answers, so I'm just calling to say the first lady was Audrey Jeffers, and I'm gone. I'll listen off here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
She's absolutely right. I never get any answers. She's also absolutely right with the answer. Audrey Jeffers was the first female member of the Legislative Council of Trinidad and Tobago. Give you some quick history. Audrey Jeffers, she was a social worker, as we all are aware of. She was born on the 12th of February, 1898, and was most known for her groundbreaking achievements in social work, establishing the Coterie of Social Workers in 1921, which provided free lunches to poor school children. The organization then opened the first breakfast shed in 1926 and opened other branches throughout the country, as well as homes for the elderly, troubled women, and day nurseries. She advocated for the introduction of girls' scholarships, the establishment of a women's police force, and increased employment for educated black women. In 1946, she became the first woman to be nominated to the Legislative Council. Thank you very much, caller from Port of Spain. You've won yourself a snowmint. Come and collect it anytime at our studios.
But something that you just said there with regards to Ms. Jeffers' achievements, free school lunches, social safety nets, they sound good. The problem is social safety nets could end up very bad very easily. And I think that's part of the issue with CPEP and URP. And I hear what you're saying. You prefer to say it to the corporations. The problem is politics is politics. Mm-hmm. And to what extent will it just be transferring the issue under a different banner? Because I could easily see, because the precedent is set with CPEP, and because we, the people, have allowed it, if the local government now is in charge of and they'll just get a new acronym and a new structure or whatever, but it might be, a new skin for the same old. And some of the issues, it might resolve part of the problems that come out of CPEP, and how the gangs are and the awarding of contracts. But the labor market issues and the fact that, look, these safety nets are not supposed to provide for you and your family in perpetuity. This is not supposed to be a long-term job. This is not supposed to be the answer for the rest of your life. This is supposed to just be, well, you could get on your feet. But if we have work to be done that's ongoing, the maintenance and upkeep of, public spaces, why are we just leaving it to a jobs program? We could have a jobs program to supplement.
I think also with those two things that you've mentioned, it links me back to two other situations here in TNT. This is where we're seeing that we benefited tremendously from energy and from that wealth that we gained, but there was no long-term thinking. Let's look at HEC, for example, again. To me, HEC shouldn't be something that everybody now desires to have a HEC house. Mm-hmm. Right?
Like a government work.
That is what some people, that is what their end goal is, to have an HEC house. The waiting list for HEC is long. To me, people's end goal shouldn't be HEC. HEC should actually be a temporary measure. Mm-hmm. Should be something 10 to 15 years. And every 10 years,
or even less.
10 years, every 10 years we do an assessment. 10 to 15 years and you pay rent. Right? You have housing, you pay rent, obviously the rent will be subsidized because people would not be able to afford housing, and we have to find jobs for these individuals in society. It's the same thing. By the way, a good example in the United Kingdom, the other part I was going to raise up was social expenditure here in TNT with the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. We have many people here in TNT who are collecting money from the government who are very much capable of working. I always speak about this one gentleman who I don't know how he gets about all over the place. But unfortunately, I think he lost half of his big toe, right? Very much capable of working, walks all over, he's always begging, he always wants money, but he's also the very first in line at the beginning of the month to go and collect his checks from the Ministry of Social Development. And yet still, he's always saying, partners for the children, this and that. The man is capable of working. I use that as one example because I believe there are many others. I've seen people who walk with a stick, who walk with a cane, to the bank, to the grocery, but after that they put the cane at the side and they're dancing, drinking alcohols. The point is, as you see it in the United Kingdom, with what they refer to as the dole, when you go on benefits, right? They are doing continuous assessments. If it is that you are able to work, they are going to try and help you find a job. And it should be something similar here in TNT. If you are able to work, well, we are going to try and find you a job. And there's some people who will say, well, I don't want that job. I don't want to do that. Some people might say, I just rather stay on collecting benefits or different schemes or different programs. No, we have to cut out that mentality as well. If it is you are able to work, whatever the job may be, you're receiving an income, there's a certain level of independence that you have. Not great independence that you have, you're also contributing to TNT.
Look at the food drive that you started off on this show over Christmas, and we had various food charities on the show because of it. What it is, a common thing that they said, we have to vet everybody. There's too many people who have needs. We don't have enough for everybody, so we have to prioritize, we have to vet, we have to weed out the scams who are going to try to mislead us, right? The family that's going to send, or everybody in the household and try to make it as if they're from different families to try to get what we should only be sending one of per family. So if charity organizations could have, certain responsible ways to regulate how they distribute, why does it seem as though, to some extent, public welfare schemes or social safety nets are free-for-alls? We saw what happened with GATE. We saw what happened with GATE when that went out of control, and now we bemoan, oh my gosh, we didn't do it properly, and now GATE cannot afford to spend the money that it used to spend when it was a free-for-all. How much of that was wasted?
You give people a certain level of independence, or you make them independent of you, and then you lose your power. If you make people independent, you lose your power, and to a great extent, you probably lose your support as well.
Well,
no government dare touch social development and family services.
It's not just that, because people don't understand, and this might be arrogant of me to say, but in the long run, what benefits you? What benefits you is to carve your own piece of society through your own efforts, because you will earn more than any social safety net, except unless you're trying to really game the system and defraud the system, right? There's also the chance of that. But really and truly, it's hard to build a life if you're taking these minimum wage or near minimum wage opportunities. You could stack them all together all you want, but for the most part, you're not going to necessarily build anything that's a legacy for your children to then help them accumulate generational wealth. That's just not how you're going to do it, through CPEP or through some sort of social relief grant. So I understand, in the short run, it's very enticing. Why am I going to work when I could just do X, Y, or Z and laze around? And we see that too often, and we're not the only country where this happens. But the fact that the government not only is, okay, yes, for votes, and this is why I say we can move CPEP under a different banner with local government, it might end up being the same thing, for votes, right? But then society now, for the most part, we don't really see an issue with this on, general society, the majority of society.
The question is whether or not people want change.
We're losing productivity because of it.
People want change. Are people honest enough with themselves for that level of change?
Quick thing, we want diversification. What is the point when we are allowing resources and productivity to just be flushed down the toilet? How are we going to diversify when too much of it is wasted?
Well, certainly a very interesting conversation to conclude the show, but that's it for this edition of the program. Sean Michael Small.
Mr. Keita Shah.
Could see your face, that's good.
Yes, you can see me now.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we wish you a very good day. I haven't said this for quite some time. Just remember, today is a good day to have a good day and to have a great week ahead. I am Keaton Shaw. That's Mr. Sean Michael Small. This has been Talking Points, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN. I'm Andre L. Batiste, and you're watching WESN, the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
I am Sule A. Joseph, and we are WESN, Content Capital.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on WhatsApp Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this is screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
WhatsApp Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
trying to win the contest for influence. Prigozhin's troops have been on the front line since the autumn, trying to overrun Bakhmut. They have not succeeded. But what Prigozhin wants to do is say, don't blame me here. It's the commanders, the military commanders in the defense ministry who are to blame. So you need to give me more resources, more basically personnel. And the Russian defense ministry, quite frankly, doesn't trust him. So you have that internal battle going on. But then you have the military situation in Bakhmut. This is a very, very bloody fight on both sides. There are mass casualties because of the way the Russians are effectively attacking, almost like a zombie movie, the way the Ukrainian defenders put it. But after 10 months of assaulting Bakhmut, going back to last May, they still haven't taken it. And what we have, not only from Prigozhin, but from latest reports is that they no longer have the armor to carry out those types of assaults. They no longer, in fact, have organized mechanized divisions. So you're just talking about wave after wave of human assaults trying to break the Ukrainian resistance. And while it's inflicting a lot of casualties on both sides, so far the Ukrainians are not withdrawing from Bakhmut. I think they may withdraw in the near future in a controlled, limited withdrawal. But if that happens, Russia will have at most a Pyrrhic victory, having expended a great deal of resources and manpower on a city that is not really strategically important in the Ukraine war.
If it's not such an important city, why have both Ukraine and Russia thrown so many men towards it, particularly, as you say, the Wagner Group?
Well, symbolism from the Russian side. The Russians have not had a victory, significant victory, since last July, when they took almost all of Luhansk province in the east. They suffered badly in a counteroffensive when Ukraine took territory in the east and the south. They really wanted a victory by the first anniversary of the war, and Bakhmut was to be that victory, but it didn't happen. So now they look, going into the spring, how can we give Vladimir Putin something to say that this war is still going our way? So they keep pouring in the personnel. From the Ukrainian side, even if you lose, you win. What we saw similarly last summer is that the Russians poured so many resources to take parts of eastern Ukraine, they weakened themselves and were vulnerable to the Ukrainian counteroffensive. I think the calculation here is if the Russians continue to spend a lot of manpower, a lot of their limited resources, including declining shares of armor on this type of battle, they'll be vulnerable when Ukraine, bolstered by supplies of tanks and other weapons from international partners, go on the counteroffensive later this spring and this summer.
Scott Lucas talking to us there from University College Dublin. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for your analysis and your time.
Thank you.
In other news, South Korea and Japan have announced a series of measures to ease tensions over wartime forced labour. The United States has welcomed the news as a groundbreaking step to improve ties between its most important allies in the region. Now, the tensions date back to Japan's occupation of Korea, which ended in the 1940s, but it appears that Japanese firms today won't be paying into the compensation programme. Lisa Kamenoff explains.
From 1910 to 1945, present-day South Korea was under Tokyo's colonial rule, with over 780,000 South Koreans mobilized as forced laborers for Japanese companies or sex slaves for the military. A painful part of their history which has hindered the relationship between Seoul and Tokyo. In a new attempt to repair ties, South Korea proposed a plan to compensate forced labor victims and their families.
As part of the support for forced labor victims and their family members, the Foundation for Victims of Forced Mobilization by Imperial Japan will pay compensation and delayed interest to the plaintiffs of 3 Supreme Court decisions in 2018.
In addition to compensation money being funded by South Korean private sector companies, Seoul hopes that Japanese companies would take the initiative to contribute as well. Japan welcomed the decision but stressed that its companies are not required to pay since Tokyo's 1965 treaty had already settled reparations package of $800 million in grants and cheap loans. But in 2018, the South Korean Supreme Court ordered Japanese companies to pay further compensation directly to the victims. This morning, South Korea's plan received backlash from victims' families, accusing the government of capitulating to Tokyo.
It's so pitiful. The Yoon Suk-yeol government is pushing ahead with pro-Japanese trade negotiations that trample on the established legal rights of its citizens and exempt Japanese war criminal enterprises from legal responsibility. It is unacceptable violence.
Washington has hailed the move as groundbreaking new chapter as it urges Japan and South Korea to present a united front to counteract the nuclear threats from North Korea.
For more on this story, reporter Andrew Salmon joins us live now from Seoul, South Korea. Thanks for speaking to us on the programme, sir. There may be people watching this who find that story rather bizarre. Can you give us a bit more context here? Why are Korean companies paying this compensation for Japanese colonial-era crimes and not the Japanese companies themselves?
Right, exactly. I mean, what basically happened in 1965 was the Japanese, in order to restart diplomatic relations with South Korea after the end of World War II, paid a massive compensation fund. This was about $800 million in soft loans, grants, and aid, and subsequently assisted South Korean industrial development. Here's the issue for South Korea domestically. What happened with that $800 million, instead of it being handed to the victims of wartime forced labor, it was used by the Seoul government at the time for domestic economic development. And so it's my understanding which the companies which back in 1965 benefited from these Japanese monies are going to be the companies which are paying into this foundation and this fund for the surviving forced laborers so many years later.
And Andrew, is this deal now going to stick? Because there have already been some protests where you are, haven't there?
They have. I mean, the protests are pretty small. Remember, it's a Monday here. It's still pretty wintry. It's pretty cold. I think we need to be looking days, weeks ahead, maybe see what happens during the weekend. A number of significant organizations have come out against this. The umbrella unions have come out. The opposition has come out. And as you showed, some of these smaller NGOs and civic groups have come out. But I think there's another question which is facing the Yoon Suk-yeol administration here, and that is this. This is a political decision. It was agreed after a lot of diplomatic toing and froing between Tokyo and